Can you elucidate the link between an eco-village and permaculture? I don't want to make assumptions, but
Yep. Okay, great question. Because it's an eco village is essentially a human settlement, like there's suburbs and there's all different sorts of human settlements that are created, towns and villages. An eco village is a place that's been designed particularly using the principles of permaculture to think through, first of all, like what is the lay of the land, where is the natural water systems going, what are the places that need protecting, and then how do you fit the people within that landscape in the most sustainable way, and also in a way that means that they're able to collect their water, generate their waste, generate their electricity, deal with their waste, have spaces to grow food. And how do you design a landscape that facilitates that and makes it and normalizes that? And then also creates the opportunity for community. So I moved here from the city after setting up the permaculture city farm because I really wanted to be able to offer education in a way that say, okay, this is how it's possible to live a one planet way of life. Like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it taste like? If you were to build a house, what decisions do you make? If you make a garden, what does that look like? Like, like I think until you get a chance to experience it, immerse yourself in it, see it, taste it, touch it, it's hard to kind of get a sense of what that might be like. So I've really tried in all the things that I've done here to find a way to diminish the footprint of our life here by 80%. Because I was thinking, if you've got, at the moment, if everyone lived like a typical Australian or a typical American, you'd need 4 or 5 planets to meet our needs and absorb our waste. So we're so far in overshoot, it's ridiculous. So, there are some people on the planet who are living under it, but mostly, if you add up everyone on the planet, we need 1.7 planets to meet humanity's needs. So basically, by the middle of the year, by 1st of August, everything that we do for the rest of the year is in overshoot and it's doing future eating. So what does the life look like? That's not going back and wearing hair shirts and living a life that no one is going to even respond to. Like, what does it look like in a way that is appealing? So I spent a lot of time trying to design a house that looked quite modern, but yet produced all its electricity and had used 80% less water and dealt with its waste locally and was surrounded by food, but felt really beautiful and was modern and clean and fresh. But the materials that I chose, like I found reclaimed materials or I found things that were from the local area, like vernacular materials. And the size of the house was different too. Like the smallest possible thing that you can call a house was the main part, and then it was like flowed inside and outside. So it didn't feel like everything had to happen in this spot, but it was connected with nature. So I really tried to think through a lot of the questions that people might ask just to show, here's what's possible. So then I created a YouTube channel about that and I run courses about that. And I've invited, you know, school groups to come through. So opportunities for young people to come and experience it. And I remember one young one, we at the end of our permaculture school camps, we have these circles, what have you learned here and what stuck with you? And one kid said, Morag, it's so amazing. Like, I had no idea there was this whole other civilization just so close to the city. It's like, obviously, it was that that far removed from what he'd thought was normal. But then he also went to say, but it actually feels really good and it feels like so easy to do this. And like that was the perfect responses. That's what I'm trying to go. It's not like, oh, that's a hippie stuff. I don't want to do that because that's so far removed from what my normal is. So really trying to find a way to communicate in a positive way what it can be to live well, but at the same time nourishing us so that our family's growing up feeling happy and well and grounded and goes into the world not having to be taught about this stuff, but just has it infused in every cell of their body. And I my teenage boy at the moment, like he would probably he would like he has a bit of an aversion to like the thing of being possibly classed as a hippie, but yet if you ask him about anything to do with chickens or gardens or how to build stuff or how to fix stuff or whatever, he'll know about that, but he just doesn't identify with it. So it's just all in there. And I think a lot about what we can do is to tend to the context of the places in which we live. Like, what if we surrounded our cities and towns with far more food producing areas or beautiful natural street trees that invited, birds and, like amazing. We can transform, we can retrofit our cities and towns, which is one of the big dimensions that permaculture really focuses on. Like, okay, we've done this damage. We've done this damage on farms. We've done this damage in our towns and our suburbs. Like, let's recognize it. And we learn through the permaculture design process how to observe and interact. That's one of the first principles. Like, okay, let's sit back and look at what's going on in an ecological system, in a social system, and start to map that. And then through that deep mapping of what's going on, to be able to find some design solutions to turn that around. And so you can apply the design principles to a physical system, or you can design it, apply it to like I was talking before, an economic system. So our local town here, Mullaney, for example, when people first started moving back to the land in this area, it was a really degraded land and really degraded local economy. And so the community looked at that and said, okay, well, how do we thrive here? So they created a local bank and local money system. They created local um, community cooperatives. So they're saying, okay, we really want to have different kind of food system. Let's create a
Actually, could I ask you to back up a bit? I wanted to ask you about the origins of crystal waters, and so I think you're getting into it, but if you could go even a bit farther and talk about the 600, I think about 650 acres and how it came to be, what it was, who came up with this idea, just to give us a bit more context.
So Crystal Waters started actually back in the 1970s. It was one of the back to the land communities at that time. And there was a guy called Bob Sample who still lives here now. He's in his late 80s, I believe, or early 90s. And his family had been involved in doing farming in this whole valley through here. So it was one big farm to start with. And it was managed from like a Sydney office. And anyway, there was this one little back block that was right up at the very headwaters of the valley, where we are. The stream comes out of the mountain down into our river, and you can swim in the river, you can drink in the river, like so fresh, it's so beautiful. But it was like a little bit hilly to be any good in farming. So he said to his family, look, how about you just give me that 1 square mile and I'll start a community up there. So he got this piece of land from his family and then basically gave it to the community to start a cooperative, and he would invite people to come and live here. And that was sort of, it was kind of like an early hippie community at that stage. And but it was very free, no structures, no system set up. And so it grew really fast and then it collapsed really fast. And there was no, like, if someone put a whole lot of energy in and they really wanted to build a house, but they couldn't sell it because there was no legal system, or they put a whole lot of energy, they wanted to leave, they didn't have anything they could take with them to start somewhere else. And people started to argue about, you know, energy or spaces or, equity and things. So anyway, it fell apart. But there was a core group that said, no, actually, we really want to make a go at this. Like, this is really important to demonstrate what a different kind of way of life could be. And so then they said, okay, I think we need to get organized. So this was in the early 80s, and they started to invite the permaculture designers in. So between 1985 and 1988, the permaculture designers spent 3 years walking this land, understanding it, talking to local people, getting to know the bioregion, and started to map out and looking and working through council to sort of change the policies in council to be able to enable this to happen. Because at the time, 650 acres here in this part of Australia, you could build one house per 100 acres. So that would have meant 6 houses, because that's pretty much rural zoning in Australia, one house per 100 acres. So they had to say, look, we're not going to destroy the farming potential. We're actually going to amplify it because we're bringing more people onto the land. We're bringing more people into growing, to caring, to tending to animals, to doing woodlots, to all of these things. So we're bringing more people in, but we'll have a low impact. and we'll look after our roads. We'll set up all our water systems, all our waste systems. We're not going to expect you to put sewers in or all of this. That's all going to be self-generating within this eco village. So after 3 years, they managed to get approval. They managed to get up to 83 houses. And the smallest that they let people divide it into was a 1 acre lot. So essentially, there's 83 1 acre lots, but not all in a big row. Where like there's a little hamlets across the place, which is really nice. It's about 13 hamlets. And there's 11 ridges all the way through the place. And in each of the valleys, we've created lakes. So that's helped to rehydrate the landscape, create habitat for migratory birds to there's turtles in there, there's fish, there's eels, there's like I've seen swans and pelicans land in there, and there's always ducks and egrets and cormorants and like it's and each of the hamlets looks over one of these little lakes. And so I my veranda looks over one of these lakes, and it's one of the things that I have absolute joy in doing every day. Um, so so the 1 acre lot is what you can hold as a freehold lot, and then you share own the rest of it. So only 14% of the land is owned privately. The rest is held in common. So it's bringing back that idea of the commons and that we share care for this place around us. So all the river flats were left the space beside the river is a buffer zone so that anything that runs off the village gets buffered before it goes into the river. So the rights of the river and the cleanliness of the river has the highest priority. So really valuing water. And then the river flats, where you've got lots of beautiful soil, is protected. No development on that. That's potential agricultural land for people to lease and use and share projects. And then on the mid slopes that are facing towards the sun, here in the southern hemisphere, that's the north, is where the houses are. And so that's where you get good access to sun for solar power, for a nice slope for using gravity for, feeding your gardens with water and facing it towards the sun. And then on the southern slopes, or the slopes away from the sun, is where there's woodlots or regeneration, because it was pretty much just degraded, eroded land when we got here. Nothing, pretty much. It was quite devastating. Now you can hardly see the houses because it's so abundant and full. And then the steeper slopes, which are highly erodible, we don't build on those either, but they've been rewilded. So 50% of the land has been completely rewilded, and we have some basic things. There's some basic rules here. They're not really rules, but guidelines. Like you don't have cats and dogs. That's an agreement that we have. Not that we don't like cats or dogs, but we have incredible wildlife and a lot of ground dwelling. So I have there'll be a goanna that might just wander past my house, and there's always kangaroos and wallabies, and there's koalas up in the hill, and there's platypus in the stream, and echidnas. And when it's raining and I've got a cyclone bearing down on me, I know that that's happening because the turtles will come up out of the dam and start to build nests up higher. And there's 160 species of birds that have been monitored here, and over 30 species of frogs. And we have all these amazing lizards and ground dwelling birds. And, it's just this, it's a wildlife refuge. So, in a way, what you start to recognize is that you are one of the species in this landscape, and that you're caring for this in that with that fair share ethic of going, okay, well, here I'm diminishing my footprint so that all life can thrive. And that every day when you wake up in a midst of that sort of place, it reminds you. And when you've got your own waste system, if you pour something down the sink, it's going into your garden and you're going to eat it. So you kind of go, okay, well, what is it that I'm going to pour down my sink? What's the kind of shampoos that I use, or the washing detergents? Like, is that going to be harmful, or is it going to be able to be processed by my soil and then by my food tree plants, and then I can eat it safely? And so it sets up a different set of conditions by which you live. And it's not hard, but it's just a different set of decisions that you make. And when you look out the window and you see, oh my gosh, look at these amazing animals, and you've got kangaroo when you drive down the road, the kangaroos have all got their tails on the road or sitting in the middle of the road. The right of way is for wildlife, pedestrians, and cyclists. So cars have the least right of way on the roads here. So you have to drive slow. You have to stop if there's a kangaroo or snake on the road. The other day there was a snake on the road, and my husband leaned out and he was just sort of like tickling the tail of the snake, trying to get it off. So it was safe. Like the point was, snake, you need to get off the road because someone else might come and you might get run over. So it's like that's the ethic, I guess, of being here.